it allows me to showcase them that, hey, I recognize your house should have sold. This is why I'm calling you. This is what I specialize in. Houses that are in limbo. You're in this situation that I recognize you're in. And they opened up.
All right, folks, welcome to another one of our interviews here in the group. I'm always trying to bring you guys people that are doing interesting things in the industry around the marketing space. Today, we got a treat for you folks. We're going to be talking to Moses Mesa out of South Texas. And one of the things he's doing is something I really haven't seen out there, which is weird for me to say, right? He is combining two really, really awesome sources of lead generation. One is videos on YouTube, which is amazing, kind of a long-term play. We'll talk about that. And he's also doing prospecting of expired listings, okay? Which I don't really see people do both of those. It's kind of weird. It's not very common, especially when they're building one off of the other. And I thought that kind of just blew my mind. Like, what? Really? Wait, hold on. So, because I haven't really seen that skill set overlap, I'll be really honest with you. It's kind of weird, but it's a weird case, but really interesting, really interesting. So, without further ado, I want to introduce Moses Mesa. And Moses, do a quick intro here for folks watching us, and tell us, number one, how'd you get into real estate? A little bit about your story, and then how'd you get into YouTube? Go for it.
I got into real estate. I've been licensed since 2017 of July. I got into it because a buddy of mine called me about it, but the call was mainly about wholesaling and investing. And I didn't really it was a terrible pitch. It wasn't a pitch, but it was more it was a friend saying, "Hey man, I think you'd be really good for this," or I also need a helping hand. Um, we still keep in touch, and I joke with him because it was such a horrible like presentation on his end, but he's being a friend, knowing that as a friend he recognized that I would like the information, and
Gotcha.
rightfully so. I actually went and started Googling, and I was like, oh well, yeah, he was right.
Gotcha.
But it led me to a tinkering with the off market uh industry, if you would. And then but I also wanted the legitimacy of being licensed, because every
Okay.
time, this is my very first experience on getting on the phone, was the I felt like the lack of legitimacy was present, and it was hard to get around that.
Okay.
And so I got licensed,
Okay.
because I wanted to be able to say, I'm a realtor here in town. I
I'm a
wanted the
pro.
legitimacy. So I go and get licensed in 2017, and then the other realization came of, where is my business going to come from? And then I know my history, I know my background, I know my sphere. I know that I would not have been able to feed the appetite of the frequency that I wanted to operate at. And so I quickly discovered, what the expireds was, and to me it just looked like a treasure trove,
Yeah.
because every day there was expireds. The way I would look at them was they would look at leads to me. And so as long as I know that I had the okay from my broker that I could call them, and I asked her, I was like, is am I going to get in trouble? Is there any violation? Or yeah, they said no, call them. I said, okay. So it looked like just a green light on a racetrack to me. And
Got it.
so I started calling, recognizing that it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. Not that if it was, I would have stopped, but I underestimated that it wasn't that hard in
Got it.
terms of getting over that drunk monkey in your head saying, because trying to dissuade how the day is going to go, because I feel like that's probably where I spent a lot of time on, in terms of like the evolution,
I gotcha.
but you have
And
you have
had you ever done cold calling before? That was your first, like sales
um
before or anything like that?
I'm sure, I've done sales, but not as intricate as this.
Got it.
And I guess that's where it came from, slowly chomping off of, the what it is, and at first, yes, of course I was intimidated. I remember specifically only feeling geared or qualified that I could take on anything under 300, thinking that there was better talent or better skill than what I could provide. So I feel like naturally I was setting limitations on myself. Then when I started getting these appointments, I was wondering, I was like, oh, well, how the agent that I essentially took the listing from, I mean, I say that just to give clarity, but it's not their listing anymore. But it's and I feel like, don't worry about if people are going to snark at you about you working the expireds. They won't, and if they do, what are they going to do? But that's the kind of conversation that I had to have with my broker,
And with yourself, it sounds like, right? Like, trying to convince
exactly. And, and
yourself, right? That
and
that's a right,
myself.
it's a
But
good way to do it.
yeah, half of it was, am I qualified? Am I able going to do even better, or am I just going to create this
Yeah.
false hope or
Because
narrative,
you
right?
don't choose who expires that day, actually, right? You can
No,
get a
you
two
don't. You
million
don't.
dollar listing, you can get $100,000 condo. You can, it's like,
Yeah, exactly. And so naturally, I recognize that I would probably at that time call $170,000 listing versus a $1.7 million listing, thinking they were going to be able to spot out any BS that may have come their way from my presentation, if there was any or
yeah,
whatever. Right? I just felt inadequate at the time. I quickly recognized there wasn't much of a higher standard than what I was already able to provide. I learned that immediately,
100%.
immediately just from looking at what I referred to it as the underwriting of, do I want that listing? And so I was able to, I mean, okay, let's go back and let's say I can't, I'm positive I'll find a one photo listing on any price point in the MLS going back a week. I'm sure there's one out there, right? All I have to do is take two photos and I would essentially do better than that. And so
Pretty easily.
naturally, I would start seeing who was and who wasn't doing what I could do better. You know what I mean? I was gauging
Got
myself
it.
from the opposition.
100%. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think that that's one of the many stories we tell each other to not make the call. That's just one.
Yeah.
Are they
Well,
going to be
that's,
angry at me? Are they going to
yeah.
be upset with me? Am I,
You'll create you'll
are
create your own
yeah,
narrative.
our agent's going to hate me, right? Because like you said, I'm taking their listings, I'm taking their
Yeah.
clients from them, right? You're kind of there's a lot of ways to do it. I remember one time, this is early on in my career when I was calling expireds, and call this. And early on, I didn't even, and I did this out of ignorance. But then I saw an advantage to it. I didn't even look at the address. I didn't look it up. I would just make the
Oh
call.
wow.
I would ask them, "Hey, are you still thinking of selling? I bet I can help you. Let me bring you a buyer." All these things, right? And one guy said, "You know what? I get a lot of calls. I got to talk to you." He was an older gentleman, right? You know what? Come over tomorrow if you and let me see what you got, right? And then after that, I looked it up. It was a waterfront property, right, in Seattle, Washington, that it's worth probably 10 times what my typical price point was. 10, maybe more, 10 to 15 times what normal price point was for me. And it was waterfront. I had no idea what I was doing. I kind of, oh, okay. But in that case, again, I said, you know what? I did the hard part. I got the appointment. I did the hard part, right? I found an agent in my office, luxury agent, that,
Good.
that handles waterfront. And I go, can you go with me? We'll split it. You think who's going to say no to that? Come to a listing appointment with me, right? The guy wants to talk to us. Is waterfront worth millions, right? Millions in Seattle. Like, would you go with me? Will you split that with me? I almost would have done it for free, Moses. I would
And
have
that
said,
luxury agent probably looked at you like, what did you do
how
to
did
get
you?
this
No,
listing?
they
Yeah.
didn't believe it wasn't.
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
called them up. I didn't, but she just didn't believe. How can you call up like a $5 million listing, right? And I'm like, if I would have thought about it that way, I probably wouldn't have made the call either. If I would have thought
Yeah.
about it that way, right? But
Yeah.
sometimes people, you just have to connect with them and just ask them, ask. Hey,
It's
if I could,
not as scary as what these
no
agents
way,
think it is.
no,
And
no way.
and I feel I've always had that rule, or that uh understanding of the 10,000 hours in, you become a master at something. My goal was to just knock out 10,000 hours of, because I was curious what it was like on the phone after I've been on the phone or dialed 10,000 hours, you know?
Gotcha.
And so, and naturally, I don't have to. I remember those days when I would do like the Rocky montage, and I'd have to shadow box in the kitchen to make one call. Now it's evolved far from that, and I can
Gotcha.
spot the agents who are terrified of picking up the phone. I'm
Easily.
not going to, if they're too focused on that, and I mean, I'm talking about conversations where we're essentially kind of comparing systems and who's more effective, and how do we reach our quotas, from other agents in my office. And I still feel like a lot of them think that they're gonna get told, to go F yourself or something over the phone.
Yeah.
I can count you the times,
Yeah.
how many times I've been told that. And
It's not a
compared to,
real, it's sorry, let me say it this way. Tell me if you agree. As a practitioner, it is a fear-based objection, okay, from an agent,
yeah, yeah,
not just clients. Agents have objections too. It's a
yeah, yeah, yeah.
fear-based objection, and those are usually not based in reality. The
It's not.
fear-based objection. I hear the same thing when
It's
people
not.
forget expireds. I see agents that only want to call their sphere, right? The people they know, like, and trust, because if I call them, they're gonna get mad at me for not ever having called them before.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
like, bro, that's not a real thing. And who would do
yeah,
that, right? Like,
yeah.
seriously, who's gonna get mad at you? Why
I
haven't you
don't.
called? They're not your mom. They're
Yeah,
your
I don't
friends,
get
like
it.
your coworkers.
Exactly. I don't get it. And like, but it just, for me, it was, I knew that if I would depend on the frequency of referrals that my sphere would send me, I wouldn't be able to. It just wouldn't suffice my appetite,
Yeah,
And I quickly realized that if I'm gonna sit around waiting for referrals, I feel like that's more of me sitting on the pier with the fishing pole versus being out there on the
hunting.
hunt. You know what I mean? And I've recognized when you go through and you incrementally chop off 100 hours off of those 10,000 hours, you quickly develop essentially feedback and data from the source. So your opinion, I feel like, will end up being developed from the source, from the homeowners. And it allows, I mean, if you have rich data for whatever it is, whether it's the stock market, options trading, uh, off market deals, or whatever it is, you know what I mean? If you have real rich data, you can do something with that. And so, what I'm referring to is the number one complaint being what? When you're speaking to the source, 50 times a day, you get to understand what their concerns are,
Yeah,
and the number one complaint is that I've seen, at least in my market, is my agent didn't do enough. You
yeah,
know what I mean? And so I've always leveraged every bit or leg or variable of the system geared towards showing that this is not just basic template representation. You know what I
gotcha.
mean? And I mean, I can still, to this day, I'm still pulling out like layers and overlapping brilliance of ways that I can implement, whether it's like texting them right after we've called, the email, just little idiosyncrasies that I can see within the system, how effective this is. You know what I
Gotcha.
mean? I'm
If it
just blown
helps.
away because I still find new ways.
I gotcha. So you lost the fear. You had that conversation with yourself, and you came out on top. You got comfortable calling the expired listings. You're calling them, make it a part of your process. How do you make the jump from there to YouTube? That's usually not a jump that I see. People that do
Well,
prospecting double down on prospecting. What got your mind interested in YouTube?
because I recognize that, and I still have not really been like asked verbatim the way I was thinking of it. It's always been paraphrased, but um the general point is they want to know, because most of the time for the most part, they end up do relisting, or they still would like to get the house sold for whatever reason. They just are in limbo because they don't know how to go about it as they thought they did, because they just hired the professional. They just hired not the professional, a quote unquote professional, right? I recognized they don't grill who they ask. They don't grill them with the questions and ask enough to know if they are the right option to hire. You know what I mean? And so it allowed I convey or incorporate the channel in the conversation by saying, hey, this if I'm gonna paraphrase this, but it's essentially showing them factual evidence of my expertise.
Got
That's
it.
really it. This isn't, and I have to.
YouTube is like a it's like social proof. It's like, hey, you know
Yeah.
what? I can
Yes.
market. I can market. I can
Yes.
get people interested in properties.
The
Check
same
this out.
way. The same way you have economists who still go and talk and bring in, like, what's the guy's name, Michael Buffer or Burry, and because he essentially predicted or foresaw the '08 crash, things like that. It allows me to showcase them that, hey, I recognize your house should have sold. This is why I'm calling you. This is what I specialize in. Houses that are in limbo. You're in this situation that I recognize you're in. And they open up. Because they see that you actually quickly will be able to see that you have value if you're showing them the reference, which is going to play as your evidence, not just a opinionated reference like,
Yeah.
hell,
I'm the number one agent. I'm
yeah,
the best. I'm the
I'm the
it's the
best,
truth.
I'm the best. And, like, I always could see the agents not going in detail and gloating about the stuff that I imagine they would gloat about, right? Versus, hey, we closed. I always wanted to know, well, how did it go? You know what I mean? How did it go? Like, what defines a like I thought closing on house was just kind of the standard. You know what I mean? Versus, like, the joke that Chris Rock says where he's talking about dads or fathers bragging about paying the bills and feeding the family, and he's like, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. I My standard was, I thought we were supposed to get it closed, right? My thing was, how did it go? And detail that in the section, in the conversation. So when I started doing that online, I recognized the referrals would come in because we would close on a house, and I would tag, or I would like and comment on all the comments that would come in whenever they were congratulating their friend. So I quickly learned to trust my own, uh, you know, uh, it's the word I'm looking for, understanding of what we have here on the industry, right? And I could see
Got
that
it.
that's the point that I was making on that, is just trusting, your observance of what you're seeing in the market and the lacking of, because I already know, very accurately that they think that none of us are doing enough,
Yeah.
or, you know what I mean? What do they want us to see? And they just want to know that your house is getting marketed. So when I show them, hey, I have any given one of my listing tour videos are, if I can't get 7,000 views in a week, it's a failure. You know what I mean? Because I've been at it for so long. I've been at it since March of 2020 that I can identify if it's a failure or not. Even the failure videos, that if I got 5,000 views, they would consider that a success. Not in my book, but I'm essentially using the channel to help them understand
I
that,
got you.
you know, there's a different standard that they don't even recognize is out there.
I got you. And tell me, Moses, what came first? You started prospecting expired, or did the YouTube channel start first? And
Oh
how did
no,
you start that channel?
I started prospecting first, and
Gotcha.
then I quickly realized, if I would always feel like I'm getting in the ring on the call with the last agent, especially if they've hired them. I'm assuming they have some form of relationship, so I have to come in high with what I can do as a stranger who's calling them on the phone. So I can't just come in the ring trying to duke it out with my level of representation, with whatever. My level of representation has to be able to go into any ring with any opposing agent that I'm taking from, and it has to be better than that, right? Because I didn't want to. I wanted to save milliseconds from not having to check who was previously listed. So I was looking, and it didn't hit probably until like 2 years later that where I noticed that nobody was committed on YouTube in my market, where they were committing to marketing the way I have committed over the last 3 years. So
Got it.
it
Got
was
it.
easy. It was easy for me to go get the top spot organically, and then I just dialed in because whenever I recognized that I could start saying that I'm the number one most watched real estate YouTube channel in South Texas, I did that purposely because I was waiting for someone to call me out because I already knew that I could defend it and I knew how I was going to defend it.
So you
Right.
kind of you got to staked out that position for yourself. I'm the number one most watched YouTube channel, here
Mhm.
in South
That
Texas,
was me
and
put
and
into play.
you started that 3 years ago. When you started it, what was your
No, no, no.
inspiration? Were you looking at
Okay.
people in other parts, or
So the timeline is I didn't start saying that probably until about 18 months ago.
got it, got it,
And
got it.
then I was at it because I recognized no one's going to be watching my channel. For looking back at it, I've been at it for 3 years. So divide that by the first year and a half was me chasing organic traffic and learning, going through the learning curve of learning how to edit, learning how to film, record, the lighting, the sound, all of it,
Got
right? The topics that I'm going to cover, how I go about it. I was learning the identity of the channel along with knowing how to produce. Had become the executive producer, the editor. I had to do it all, right?
Yeah.
So that first year and a half was dedicated to that time. After that is when I started to see, after about like the 50th video, I could see organic, very low momentum. But I knew I had momentum, meaning the bar is so low in my market that I could see there's agents who are considered pillars of marketing. Influencer of the year awards are given to these people, and they could not get 10 views in 10 months. So I said,
Wow.
oh, well, if I can average 5 a day, I think I'm okay,
You're
right?
way
And
better. You're way better than other folks.
way better, because if these guys can't get, I mean, I'm talking about people who have 111,000 followers on Facebook. If they can't bridge that over to be 5 views or 10 views in a day, then I'm already achieving that. So I the 50 videos, the year and a half, I knew I was onto something. It was a little fish, but I had the fish, right, to go get more fish, right? And so I chopped up that little fish by saying into bait by saying I'm the number one most watched real estate YouTube channel in South Texas over the phone. So they come to it and they say, "Oh wow, you know, you're doing more than the average." And then I kept getting. Originally, I kept at it. I kept at it. Then it started hitting with the video listings, where those were the ones that were taking off. I could not understand why. I just kept at it. It was more fuel to keep at it. Now I would say this year had been the year where I could anticipate some form of, right? And then I would say the last 6 months have been where I could forecast if I cannot get uh 5,000 views in a week or so, uh, then it was a failure. I was telling that to myself.
Got it.
But all of this, keep in mind, is going towards the confidence of being on the phone. So I'm getting a listing here, I'm getting a listing there, so I'm kind of in like second gear. Then I recognize my video tours are the ones that are getting the most
Mm.
traffic, without a doubt.
Video tours of your own listings, or just nice looking properties
So
in every
everything
area?
that's on the channel has been from an expired listing.
Got it.
So when you really look at
Impressive.
it, you'll see the evolution of, like, I'm spending a lot of times on doing like my own because I have no house to promote at the time. And then you'll start recognizing, like, if you go down the history of my timeline, or the on the history of me uploading it, you'll see when the listings start to come in,
Got it.
right? Because and when you see that if you were to like put it on a timeline, you'll recognize when the conversations were being utilized with incorporating YouTube because you start to see the listings appear on the channel. Now it's gotten to where I piggyback off of last week's video's performance to get next week's listings. And it's an amazing issue that I have, but it's an issue. It's to the point to where I have to now do splits with agents in my office. I'm now starting to send an email of list of like the coming soon listings and say, hey, pick a house, give me your comps, you know, go give me what you think. Choose a house that you want to do a split with me on, and we'll do one
Gotcha.
because it saves me.
So you can focus on the marketing.
Yeah, and so I could focus on getting the appointments, right? And so now, like I said, I'm using last week's, or even if I haven't even posted the video, I could there's something in the history that I could reference already too. But it's cooler when they actually see that the house was uploaded just 2 weeks ago,
I gotcha.
right?
And tell me how that conversation goes. I mean, you're call, paraphrasing, you're calling an expired listing. How do you bring up that awesome topic, which is, hey, by the way, check
And
out
that
my latest listing.
here's the crazy part. I sometimes do I have had some people who will contact me from YouTube after already having browsed on Zillow, right? And so a lot of times I will get people who call me with a house that's kind of either on my list or it's active, right? And so I've had to do that where I say, hey, I have someone who sent me your address, and I really truly need to know if this is if the plan's still in if it's still in the plans for them to get it sold, and if it is, well, what's the timeline? Then I ask all my questions. What's the timeline? Why hadn't it sold? I'm getting all the insight because I need to go back and let this buyer know, yeah, actually, yeah, we can keep this as an option for you. What do you think? So it's me playing hitch. I'm matchmaking because I do get people calling me from these videos, right? Not a lot of them, but they do come.
Got it.
And that's the leads that I'm sure the audience would want to know. Well, what's the ROI? What's the frequency of the buyers calling in? There's more ways than you think to generate leads. Like for instance, I'm generating more business from my outbound calls in terms of like subscribers, listings, the comments, the likes, all that, the engagement. I get it kind of when I'm on the phone and it's the channels in conversation. So I will get them from that. Yeah, I'll get people calling me in from there, but that's kind of the cherry on top nowadays. That
Gotcha.
a lot of agents who are just starting out will think, how many should I be getting from the uploading of the video itself, and how many times will they call me from then? So to answer your question is like that's one way that I have had to mention the channel. I have a lady, like how I'm saying, I have a lady who contacted me, who discovered me from, she's out of state, she's out of town. I'm giving the clarity and the context to them over the phone by saying, hey, I recognize you had your house on the market for sale recently. I have someone who I don't know how serious she is. I don't, so they're helping me
Got it.
help them by saying, well, yeah, and in essence, I'm getting the info that I'm going to put in my CRM by doing two things at once.
I
If
got you.
I
And
don't,
I'll give up.
if I don't have a buyer, I will straight ask, like, if it's still in the plans to sell and they say yes or no, they will give me that answer usually because, or if they're on the fence, let's stick, of course, because if they give me the yes, that's easy. If they say no,
It's more
I,
interesting, right?
it's more interesting. I will usually resort to asking. Well, I tell them, well, I'm calling because I feel like your house should have sold. It really should have, and I'm giving them honestly my honest opinion. And whatever I will spend now a few minutes on the underwriting if I want the house because I'm going to spend the money up front, right? So I don't care about calling 1,000 calls a day. I'm a lot more rich in where I can decide if I want to list the house because if I call you, I'm going to go get 10, 15, 20,000 views for you. So that way we funnel that into conversations and offers and whatnot. So I know what I could do if you pick up that phone. But if you pick up that phone and tell me, yeah, sure, come on, let's swing by, Thursday or something. Come by the house Thursday, and I'll meet you there. That's old. I'm not celebrating that anymore. I'm celebrating if I can underwrite the house. Do I need to? I mean, will I feel confident that this is worth spending the upfront cost on? Right. So like, I'm gonna spend $300 to $500 each time, right? And they love hearing that because I'm confident on what I could do with my marketing budget. My $500 will outperform their $5,000 if they did the same thing, or they attempted to do what I'm going to do to get it sold. It'll outperform it. So a lot of that, it allows me to. I will essentially ask kind of the breaking ice question to ask, sometimes if they were happy with, or what do you think was done? Was it enough? And they say usually no. I could tell them, well, this is what I specialize in. I recognize probably not much was done. Have you checked out South Texas Living? They're like, what is that? And I tell them, I manage this on YouTube. In my market, saying that I manage South Texas Living on YouTube, that I'm the number one most watched real estate YouTube channel in South Texas, it still has that coolness because my market is a retirement community, right? Agents are still posting flyers. They are still door knocking. They are still doing open house. They're still doing a lot of things that it's easy to not do them right, right? And I recognize a lot of these agents aren't based on how they list their houses. I can tell you how they do on the marketing, right?
Okay.
So I can get an
Old
understanding.
school. It's very old school.
Yeah, it's very outdated. They're stuck in 1999, but to my advantage, I feel like it still has that coolness to say, I'm the only one who has to report the ad revenue as taxes because it's the traffic that we draw in. Utilize that. I feel like I've utilized the bravado-ness of mentioning the performance of the channel. That's what they want to hear.
Something
That is,
different. It's
yeah,
like what because most expireds, the key thing they want to do is what are you going to do differently than the last guy?
exactly.
Like what are
And they
you going
love
to
that
do
they
to get
can
sold?
see it. They love because if I tell them, hey, I have a video coming up, it's very close to what your house is. It's comparable essentially. The price point is there. Yours is at 500. I'm listing this is at 625. This is oceanfront view. You have a lot. I can It'll be worth your time to look to when this video gets uploaded to see how this is going to perform. If a mechanic were to call me and say, "Hey man, go look at my YouTube channel and for whatever expertise that I'm looking for, whether it's an attorney, a mechanic, a doctor, if they have a platform where they're willing to put their wisdom expertise on the chopping block to be judged by their peers, that's how I kind of present it for them to be viewed as. So I'm kind of help rewiring their thinking without them really knowing it, why and how this is I'm leveraging out the channel. All it is just video marketing. But I like the fact that they get to see the performance of the video, right? And so I feel like play into uh the challenge of it being tough to go get traction on YouTube, because if you can go get it, you can utilize that to your advantage. You know what I mean? Because at the same time, I sometimes they will have an agent in their mind. I had that this last week, not this week, but last week, where they said, yes, I like today. I after this one, I'm gonna follow up with an agent where she wanted to go with who she wanted to hire previously. And she caved and let the husband hire the agent. Got it wrong. Now she has someone in her mind who she wants to, but I asked her, so now the gloves have to come off and I have to box it out with this agent that I don't even know who it is. But when I tell her, why not do this? Why not go look at whoever agent that is? I don't even know who it is because you haven't told me. It's going to read as a quiz or a test to who that agent is doing, right? And so I tell them, Go look at the visibility that they have purposely. If you're purposely looking at John Doe realtor in this area, you should be able to be fairly visible, right? Then I tell her, just search by Corpus Christi realtor with me. And she's like, oh, and it clicks. They
Yeah,
know that they're searching by for them purposefully and then vaguely for me. And if it's easier for me to be visible, to be discoverable,
I love that.
how do you think it's gonna go when you list the house? And so I have to essentially do what I'm doing here on the call. Like on this video, this is essentially me kind of going through the whole spill, you know what I mean, of the call, because then they get to see, oh, whoa, Kimberly doesn't. It's kind of hard to see, or I can see that Kimberly didn't post in 9 months, and the last time that she posted, it only got 9 views. You know, and then she sees or I'll text them my information because they already, if they've given me this ear enough to tell me they may hire with somebody else, I will give them the safety net of, or the option to not go down the same path they just went down, right? So they will go and check the link that I send them because I could see that they read it, and then I could see when the view kicked in on the real time on YouTube. You could see,
Yeah,
and then sometimes I know in order which one to check to see if they went to view it based on how well the call went.
gotcha.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
so I'm just like, oh wow. So like, no kidding. Not only just like if you get on the calls and you do these calls well, you can like get the subscribers up like with the calls itself.
love it.
You know what I mean? Because they want to see what the heck is this guy talking about? Because it sounds interesting, but
Yeah,
when they
and
see
it
it,
it, it sounds very different.
it sounds very different and it sounds ahead of the curb. It allows them to feel comfortable that they're not leaving money on the table. Also, I'm able to, if I feel like it's a good way to gauge the relationship on the representation, because there were times where, looking back, I know I should have stuck with my guns and said we need a list at 350. They wanted a list at 425. I just wanted to get listings at the time. I said yes to 425. Looking back, it was a lesson learned because I knew that I should have declined the listing, but now I recognize that now I can utilize the performance of the videos to get my price reductions if I feel like we're overpriced,
Got it.
allowing a better chance to get it sold, allowing me for improving the odds of being able to have a before and after
I
video.
love that. And Mo, let me make sure I'm understanding all the use cases. So when you reach out to an expired, one of the first things you do is mention the performance of properties like theirs, right? Similar to theirs, or properties you just listed and the performance that they're seeing on
Yeah.
YouTube. And they go on the channel on their own, right? Or they can search for it and find it automatically in search results, or they'll just go directly to it. They'll watch your videos and they'll see. I'm on it right now. 15, 20,000 views on some of these properties,
Mm-hmm.
recent, which
Yeah.
is pretty awesome
And
for a
that
real
that's
estate
the
video, right?
that's the benefit of it too. It's like when here's the thing. If I can give them this forecasting of a conversation to say, because they don't know what good and bad is on
Right.
representation, right? They just know that no offers is bad, offers is good.
Yeah.
But this is, we're taking them further, right? So I can say we don't have to feel desperate for any offer that comes in, because every week that I post a listing, I can probably go get 7 to 10 to 15,000 views. So if we don't get an offer, or this week, let's say in 2 weeks I have another video coming up, we can probably get more eyeballs from there. So I'll put it probably on the back end of the video to try to go get those views and see if something comes up from those, right? So if I have 35,000 views on average on the video coming in, and I'm uploading 1 or 2 weeks a new video, I can have that spillage come back over to them. What I'm getting at is, if we're still on a disagreement on, if I really wanted to list that, I'm trying to think of a current listing that I have at, me and another agent were thinking 535, or I'm sorry, 635. He wanted to list at 675. we have a chunk of difference, right, in opinion. If I go into the meeting with him, I'm now gauging. I'm not trying hoping that I get hired. I'm gauging the relationship, how he's going to be when I ask him for a price reduction.
Yeah,
Right? I'll get the listing here, but if I can't get them to agree with the listing price that I recommend, I'll leave some leniency there, but I will tell them, guys, and I will tell them like, do you understand the traffic that we're getting? Like this is really good traffic, right? And if they understand it, they will say, great. My point on that though is if I can't get an offer from those initial 10, 12,000 views, we're probably overpriced.
I got it. So
You know what I mean?
you use it as leverage. You're saying,
I
hey,
leverage that.
I'm doing my job. I'm doing my
Yes.
job. People are viewing the property. There's a lot of
How are
interest. It's a
they
great
going
looking
to behave?
property. But if they look at the price, they go, oh, no. It's got to be the price. It
It's got to
cannot
be the
be
price.
me not doing my job. I'm doing my job. I'm
Exactly.
showing you.
And here's the difference. I stick with YouTube because on a podcast you can't really see who's tuning in, right? If let's say Spotify were to, or whatever podcast there is, if they would put, however many are tuning in, then I would go and start a podcast. Until then, I don't really care about doing a podcast.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? It sounds cool, but not in my toolbox, because if they can't respect the data that I'm showing them on the comps from the MLS, and then the fact that not only just that, that's real, that's number one. That should be the A side of the data. The B side is them seeing people saw it. They visibly saw the house from the video. It's in 4K. It's not like they can see the house. They can determine if they should go view the house,
got it.
right? And so if I can't get views or an offer in first 14 days, I'm going to request a reduction because I already
Got
told them from the beginning, I think we should list it at, let's say, 634 or 635.
it.
They disagreed. So it helps you showcase your expertise on the marketing and the real estate side,
I got it.
because you know what I mean. And they look at I've gotten that look like, you son of a gun, like you were right the whole time. I said, I know this. That's the point of that's the point of the comparables. And so it won't look as if you're just trying to weasel out,
That's
because they could,
that's what usually works. Yeah,
because that's usually what these agents will do to get the reduction, because the reductions are the easiest way to get the house sold. By,
for sure.
if I spot a cheap Rolls Royce right now that's within my price range, I'm gonna go
Good
buy
bet.
the Rolls. But I know that it's not in my price range right now.
Yeah, yeah,
If it's under something, under a certain price point, if it's under 100,000, I'm gonna say, hey, you know what, maybe that, you know what I mean. My thing is like, you have to kind of help them understand this is good marketing. This is good representation. It's effective. I don't need to do anything else. I mean,
got
of
it.
course, I should, and I'm just having this realization that I should be on every other platform as well. But I'm still mastering YouTube, right?
Got it. Got it.
And they're okay with that because they can
Oh, no, it's
see,
valuable.
yeah,
People perceive it as valuable. Anyone else can post it on Facebook or on TikTok. I mean, that's very easy to do. Posting it on a popular YouTube channel, almost no agents,
but
have
to
that.
get to funnel in, like, I don't care about owning my own domain right now on the website. I don't care about a lot of
Interest.
marketing things because I'm already dialed in with what I already know works. Whenever I'm done with this, I will take my time out and go look at how to, like, do it on TikTok, on LinkedIn, and do it, because I'm of the avid believer that the more platforms you can do this level of effectiveness that I'm doing with YouTube and the cold calling, the better. You know what I mean? But until I can really take time away from YouTube, but still have this level of competitiveness, then I will go and incorporate something else in as well.
I got you. No, and it makes sense, right? And you've got, you've mastered probably one of the hardest platforms to master through
Yeah.
organic. It's not
And,
easy to do. And I
and
wanted
I
to
think
ask
that's
you,
why they have the views on there, because
yeah,
it is tough.
it,
It
it's
is
it's
tough.
not easy. It's not
It's
easy.
not.
100%. You're right. And you know, for the audience, let them know, like from when you started, you created the channel, started posting. Was it that 18 months before you started seeing traction? Was it 18 months of posting every week, every other week?
Yes, yes. I mean, granted, I did take times off, good chunks of time too. But I don't feel bad about it though, because I did have writer's block. I did have times where I could not think of, and this is still, while this is this year. This is what ChatGPT came out earlier in what, February, I think.
Yeah,
This is while I had the subscription on ChatGPT. I have the tools, and
yeah,
I still was experiencing writer's block. Don't
happens.
don't 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 blame yourself too much on that. Just keep at it. If you know you're gonna keep continuing posting, for me now the goal is to try to at least do 2 videos in one sit down, so that way I'm always 2 weeks in advance and prepared.
Got it.
And I mean, the people are watching, you know, and now the marketing that I have, it's very, very trolly, purposefully, because you'll see me posting on Facebook like, why don't these agents put a tripod at their open houses and showcase the visitors they have coming in? And it's
That's
things that will ruffle the feathers and cause a ripple effect, but it's purposeful, right? And so people in my sphere now recognize I'm not just doing this for a popularity contest. I'm doing this because if any of your friends or family calls me to list a house, I know exactly what to do with it.
got it. Got it. No, I totally understand that. So, you know, to start, you know, if you were starting from scratch, you would set that expectation saying, you know, I got to get at least a year and a half in, 50 videos. That you mentioned, hey, about
Oh yeah.
50 videos in, you start seeing some traction. As in views. I'm not even talking about, hey, you know, leads coming in and wanting to listen, you know, hey, I want to buy a home with you, want to, you know, sell my home with you. It's getting traction on views, and then you kind of, you know, you short circuited the system a little bit by saying, hey, you know what? You didn't wait for a bunch of leads to come through YouTube. You said, hey, I'm going to leverage the views.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to leverage the
No,
popularity of the channel.
yeah, the leads were coming in too.
Gotcha.
So anytime
Both.
they did, I would create that in content in itself.
Love
Like
it.
I mean, I'm telling you, man. I mean, I feel like I had to do it because it felt like I'm pulling my pistol out of my rifle or my holster. Because yes, I would get those snarky remarks of like, oh, people don't use YouTube for real estate, or they don't shop on YouTube for real estate, while I'm picking up the 1.1 cash buyer from the airport.
Gotcha.
And I mean, I'm talking about, luckily this guy emailed me everything on his mind about buying a house in
Wow.
the email. So of course I screenshot that and I post that. Of course I got the tone. I don't say of course, but I'm surprised that like people even joked at. They're like, "Well, you created another account and you just emailed yourself." And I was like, do you think of that of me? Or are you joking?" And like, I kid you not, I remember sitting down
That's
like,
funny.
"Are you genuinely thinking this of my character?" Like,
That's funny.
but I knew that it was real.
Got it. Got
You
it.
know
I
what I
got
mean?
you.
And so,
And we had the discipline to do it because that those results didn't come the first week, the first
no,
month, the first
that
year.
that was easily a year and a half after.
Yeah. And what kept you going? You said, hey, you saw a little bit of progress, incremental progress, like a little bit of
what
momentum, you
what
said?
kept me going was that I really identified the hole in the marketing.
Got it.
And here, there in my market, I'm sure y'all's market as well, there is a king or queen of marketing in y'all's town or in y'all's market. I wanted to cut their head off. you
Nothing
know
personal.
Nothing personal, but I didn't. I
They're on the
wanted to
park
be.
benches and they're on the billboards and they're on the,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. And I'm like,
the
well,
newspapers and the
exactly. And I'm just like, and I recognize that those pillars weren't tapped in to
yeah,
spending $300 to $500 as the way I was on
I
the
got you.
listings,
I
right?
got
And
you.
because that's what it costs. That's how much I put on for the videography and for the marketing budget.
Yeah.
Now that,
Because
and this
I,
is
I was
new,
I, I was thinking you've got some drone footage in there. It's professionally shot. It's
it's
nice
all
looking
on
video.
videography.
It's a nice looking video.
The cost of these videos have only been, or all been, focused on the videography, because
Got it.
I knew that I could not replicate. the same quality of transitioning, and I feel like that matters. I've looked at other videos where the drone just looks like that, and it looks very robotic. There's a big part of the channel being successful in the quality of the filming,
Got
right?
it. Got it.
And the music and the ambiance of creating it cinematically. And if this is a $700,000 home, I want it to look like a $700,000 home. So I knew that I had to spend the money on it. But not only just that, though, I was looking at it like, well, I'm getting better in my calls. I'm probably more profitable behind my desk. So yeah, I was closing deals here and there, and I would just reinvest my money into the videography.
Got it.
And it frees up my time, my whole day, because it would take me a whole day to shoot one
Yeah.
video. So I
Yep.
said, in one day, I could probably go get another listing. Why not just send out the videographer? It
Yeah.
sounds expensive at first, but if you're getting good at, you know,
Results.
if it's getting one day, if you're getting one day a good lead, I have no problem with like waiting it out on the long end, do some splits to like replenish the cat, or I don't have to pay the initial cost because no one in my office knows how to actually go get a listing for the day. And so it's just kind of like I'm willing to sacrifice some of my commission if they cover the initial cost, because I know that I'm going to only be focusing on creating, publishing the videos and making the calls. So
I
that's
got
really how my days go. The rest of it comes from whatever I'm doing in those 2 to 3 hours daily. I
I
kid you
got
not, it's crazy. A lot of stuff comes from what I'm doing on those calls.
I love it because you're making time every day to make calls. You're lead generating. You're finding potential sellers. How much time do you spend making the videos nowadays? Not the listing videos. Because you have topical videos, market
Yeah,
minute. You're talking about the market, about the national market interest. You're talking about different topics. How long does it take you to make those nowadays?
it used to take me about 2 weeks to make one.
Wow.
It used to make me 2 weeks to make one. Now, this is the beauty of going through the mud of it's the same thing with like anything, whether you're a
Yeah.
quarterback, golfer, comedian, whatever. You got to go through the mud, and practice, right? And so I can identify how I can save my time every week. I'm even getting better, right? So it's the compounding effect of knowing, just getting better on. So now it takes me probably about 2 days, one day to record. And if even if now, if I were to do 2 videos a week or in a sitting, it does take a little bit out of me, right? So after two recordings, I'm talking about having drawn up the script, the concept of the video, come to the office and record. I would really like to be at 2 videos recorded in a sitting, right? And I feel
Got it.
like I can get that knocked out within a day. If I really, really like time blocked, I can knock out 2 videos recorded, unedited
Mm,
within an afternoon. It's time
got
within
it.
4 hours.
Got it.
And so it's nice because if I can save, let's say, 5 hours and knock out 2 videos, that's 2 weeks worth of work. And then
Yeah.
I can go back and put that into and promote that into email marketing, and really, really repurpose what I did for those 5 hours, so that way I get 10 hours worth of repurposed content.
Gotcha, gotcha. No, that definitely makes sense. That's awesome. And Moses, I want to thank you. We're almost out of time here. I want to be respectful of your time. I want to appreciate you, man. Thank you for coming on here, kind of sharing your story, kind of what's working, what's not working. If people want to continue the conversation, maybe pick your brain, learn more about what you're doing, what is the best way to reach out to you?
Here's what I would like to accomplish. The only thing that I'm missing on the channel is the comments. I've gotten to the point to where I would love, if to be able to utilize this, and you'll get to see how I think about the process. Instead of me googling or chat gpt the next conversation, I am trying to get better in my call to action in the videos to say, hey, if you're
Love that.
watching because I know my demographics of who's looking. It's either agents from around the country or locals in my who are stumbling on the channel. If they have a question, I try to get it to where it's in the comments, so that way I read that, I can tell pretty easily if they really did watch the video. A lot of times they do, and I will take that and make a whole new video based off of that. And
Love
what
that.
I do is I use that as like a Q&A. So if somebody ever has a question regarding why is it really necessary for a pre-approval, whatever question may be, I may have already built up enough catalog that I can send a link to you and answer your question, and it won't just be a Q&A. It'll be like a full on me, at your disposal on demand. And at the same time, they may not already be a subscriber, or they may be. I don't know. I'll be able to repurpose this in however which way. The magic will, those brilliant ideas will come as you go.
Got it.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah, definitely. I love that. So, I'm dropping a link to your channel. So people watching this, if you want to thank Moses for coming in here, subscribe to that channel,
it.
drop a like, drop a comment.
Thank you, and it's in the comments, and I say that because if you're viewing as a viewer, let's say agents who are looking at another channel, I do this myself on the treadmill. I have now a playlist of watch later stuff that I know if I plug this in or if I play this, start this playlist while I'm on the treadmill at the gym, I'm going to go through everything that I know where I'm taking gems from. Like there's other agents in other cities where I will try to mimic their presentation because I know they killed it.
Got
You
it.
know what I mean? Like really, really watch and use that as your research. Like I mean, I'm talking about I'll see other videos for inspiration, and I'm just like they killed that video. If I can do 10% of what they accomplished on that video, I'll be happy, right? And so I say it in terms. Not only am I saying comment in the section, but I know that if you watch a video with whatever intent or idea that you may have, let's say on this meeting, agents who are trying to understand how to utilize YouTube and all that. YouTube will give you if you get a channel with traffic, it'll give you the juice to get on the phone, right? But then now, how to really scale up the channel? It helps to collaborate with other agents, to
100%.
look at
I
what they're
love that.
doing and study what they're doing, because you'll see what works and what doesn't without. And what I feel like it could do is it could have the effect of like taking, I don't know, a year's worth or 6 months worth of study and then condense it down to, because what if they already had done that, put it
Yeah,
into action, and you got to see the results, and now it may have taken them 3 6 months to accomplish how well of a video the one that you just saw and publish it, but you see it's just like reading books. You know what I mean? You get to
100%.
piggyback off of their wisdom, and whatever niche you're working on, do that. Whether it's open houses, I mean, you could easily mimic this system to where you can be the agent who let's say if you were the agent that spars it out with my level of marketing and are putting out the tripod in the open house and said, hey man, I am, you know what I mean? Then
Yep.
we're, you know, duking it out, and you know what I mean? And but it sets the precedent. But though that those the gears won't turn unless you actually put in the time to do some research.
Be
You
a
know what I mean?
practitioner and learn, like collect some of those best practices.
Yeah,
You're not we have to recognize, not because we're not the first agent on YouTube doesn't mean that we can't learn and search out other people that have
true,
been there, been doing it,
true.
that are killing it. So I, I,
I
I love
I
that.
just can't help. I for me, I just won't be able to. It'll make what we're doing here on this meet be a lot more effective if you say, let me go look at other channels that I can tell, even with my naiveness or the naiveness that I have in my eyes, to recognize that is a very active channel, right? Go in their videos and check, what worked for them. You know what I mean? And I guarantee you, if you do that 10 minutes active purposefully, you'll get a solid idea that you can implement on your system. You know, whether if you are hosting open houses and you actually are putting out the signs on the busy streets that does get guests, right? Then you could be the agent who could puts the tripod and showcases, you know, hey, if I do an open house, this is how many on average we'll get, right? And
Gotcha.
the point of it is that you get to now vocalize the consistency of your performances. You know what I mean? Because you bet I'm posting before and after videos of like, you know, it was listed with so and so, it was listed with so and so, it was listed with so and so. Now it's listed with me and we sold.
Got it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And go through the learning curve of put on your producer hat on. Go through the learning curves. Take up the habit of writing. You know, for me, I like smoking a cigar when I'm writing because it's very mellow. It allows me to like relax, get out the thoughts. But when I'm done with a cigar, I've got concepts on concepts on concepts, right? And so
Gotcha.
I can go back and like really put into action what I know. If I'm dumping out concepts, let's say 10 concepts every other day, I can identify which ones I really should be spending time on. You know, but put in the work of really writing it out. You know, go look at other channels, go see what worked. Like for me, I can easily say my format is the stationaries. If I don't have a listing for the week to sell or promote, I will go do something that's stationary and I'm giving the information because I keep the audience plugged in. So that way, when I do get the listing, I know when to turn on the switch. You know what I
Love
mean?
it.
And you
Yeah.
won't learn that without the consistency, though.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. No, great sub Moses. A lot of tips, lot of nuggets in there. So, man, I want to appreciate you. And hey, I'd love to have you back in the group. You know, next time you want to chat and, bring something here. So you're always welcome back. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.